Use social media to publicly create notes for yourself. So the thing is, there are a lot of things connected to all of this, and I will try to explain all of those things to you. For one, actually everything you record you need to store somewhere. This is already a really practical thing, but if you recorded something for yourself, like you are in a shop and you are not sure if you want to buy the jeans or not buy the jeans, then what you can do in order to basically assist your future self, if you're unsure about the pants, for example, you could just take a picture of you within the pants and then just watch it later. Whenever you decide to go to another store, you just have the documentation. And if you then are in another store, you actually can take a look at those two pictures, like, oh yeah, at this store it looks like this, and this jeans look like this, and then you actually, on your phone, can compare the two pictures. That's something that only is possible nowadays, because we have our phones in our pocket all the times. The quality is on a decent level, and we can store many things on there, like two pictures. But what if you went even further and you actually made a video about it? So you went to the store and you took just 5 seconds of you turning around in the pants, and then you went to the other store and then you could just actually, almost like real life, compare the two. And without it, you just wouldn't be able to do this. This is just one example. Now, the next level now would be you actually making the effort to not only record this and also make it into video, but maybe to comment it also, like, okay, this, I'm just at H&M and this is the jeans, it's a size 30, and I don't think it doesn't fit quite well, but at least it's not like $200 like a Lacoste jeans would be. And next door you could make another comment, and it doesn't really mean that these comments are worth the world. It just means they are valuable to you in this particular situation. And even if you then decide not to buy jeans, how did you decide not to buy jeans? Because you went through the process of actually recording the information. When it comes to studying, it's very clear. We just take studying and then we just summarize things for us, and then the next thing is that we not only summarize it, but we try to maybe make connections and we try to find a conclusion. The conclusion is usually the exam, but we then remember it and we kind of make a decision by writing the things down we think that are important to, or are an answer to the particular questions we receive in an exam, for example. And the same approach, of course, is true for many other areas of life. I mean, it's basically, there is an explore and an exploit phase. So in the explore phase, you are like looking around, looking for options. If you are looking for an apartment, you are for a certain period of time looking around and like, yeah, this one looks nice, this one also. But you're not like, yeah, let's just take the first thing that comes into existence in our perception. And just taking a little bit of time off of it can often improve our decisions, because we are not caught up in these very little tiny decision moments, like being at the grocery store and then deciding whether to get this particular fruit or this other, or these cookies. And then we are like, yeah, these cookies look really nice. And of course, that's not a decision we would have made if we were like 2 hours after the purchase and we were like, yeah, let's go to the grocery store and let's actually buy the cookies. No, that's not the thing we did. So therefore, by removing ourselves from these situations in a timal or a temporal dimension, we actually improve our decisions. So now, when it comes to actually taking notes off of our life, the thing is, we only have our own life. Of course, we can be for all of our life, we can be like, yeah, but I'm not that important, and don't write this down for myself, because I'm not that important. Of course you could do this. Or you could say, of course, these are two extremes. The other one would be, yeah, let's just record everything that comes into my mind and just publish it to the internet. Yeah. Now, the thing is, these are two extremes, and of course, you have to find your value, not your value, but where your actual position on these two extremes. And whether you create something only for your own, whether you document something only for your own betterment or for your own future self, or you already make it into something that's available publicly, is often a step that within the right system can be so. Within the right system, if you have something that is already set in place, instead of recording it for yourself and then actually needing the storage on your phone, what you could also do is whenever you are at H&M and you record the jeans, then you are just there. So I'm currently at H&M and I was like, this jeans is the best jeans probably ever. And then you're like, maybe not. And then you could actually stop recording and at the next store press record again. Or you could just make a comment about this jeans at H&M. And for everyone who is not you and wasn't in this jeans and maybe has the same height or also is searching for a jeans like this could be valuable. And then they actually don't have to go to the store in order to try them. Of course, when it comes to jeans, this is a very particular example, an example that is very person specific because everybody's body is, of course, kind of different. But when it comes to so many other things, like what phone should I get, differences in terms of body, in terms of hands, for example, aren't that big. Therefore, it is just much easier to actually be helpful with the information you already came up with. You had like a small research phase, then you made a decision, and you can now tell others about the decision. And you already do. You are talking to friends about this. It's like, yeah, and I bought this jeans at H&M, and I think it looks quite nice, and yeah, it feels quite nice. But what if you there is a lot behind this. Most of the times, people aren't like just buy this random jeans, but they actually think about all the things they do, like everyone else, like you also do. And the thing is now, there is only like a small, of course, there is, when it comes to privacy, this is of course a huge thing, but what if you basically just took out all the things that were like really private, and then what would be left? And what I found for myself is that very often what would be left is almost all of the thing. So I could just go to H&M and just record myself. Of course, I have to be okay with actually posting my body to the internet. It's the same like here. I have to be okay with talking like to a camera, and I also have to be okay that someone will maybe make a mean comment, and this is something you have to be okay with, I guess, but and also come to terms with. But essentially, there is another thing that's, I think, very huge, because let's think about it. For example, I really went deep into notebook research a few years ago. Why? Because my notebook was at a level where I couldn't do anything. So I came up with this big vision of having a notebook where I could actually implement a paperless strategy, where I could actually basically write on, that I could take everywhere, that I maybe could also make into a powerhouse computer by using something called an external graphic card, which basically amps up the processing power when it comes to graphic processing on your computer. So I went into this research, and if I am then in this research, the thing is, 2 months after this, I have basically forgotten all of it. And this just happened again and again. It's not only when it comes to these things, but think about the things you knew when you were in school, or think about the things you knew like 5 years ago when you read this particular book. Whenever you read a particular book, you are like, yeah, and now I know so much more. And when a friend asks you like 2 years later what was left or what this book was actually about, you're like, well, I can remember the title, but I don't even remember the author. The thing is, our mind is changing very rapidly, and also with how we as a society change our relation to information, and basically we are outsourcing like all this static information to the internet and to sources that can provide us with this static information that is basically there at our fingertips almost all the time. And maybe if you have like earbuds in your ear, then it's like, hey Siri, how big is the Earth? Or hey Siri, how far away is the moon? Or hey Siri, what's the price of tomatoes at this grocery store? It's nothing we have to know. And it's the same with navigating to things. In the past, we were like, yeah, but I gotta know which road to take and then which road to take there. And you have to remember all the things, but now you don't anymore. And whenever you go somewhere, which is 5 kilometers away, of course, it depends on how long you lived at this place and whether you go by bike or by foot. This depends. These are all, of course, decision variables that go into your decision function. But the thing is, very often, we just rely on these external sources for information, and therefore we have just more processing power left. Of course, there's also an argument to be made that we don't train our brains by actually having to just learn information and then just spit it out again. But I think it's not changing anytime soon. You can Google anything, any static information, but what you actually have to do is the deciding part. You actually have to make decisions. And the better you are at working with external sources, which will be something that is also there in the future, then the better you are at making decisions. So now, how does this connect back to the things we already stated? That's a good question. It connects back on this level. Apart from the fact that we rely on external sources for actual information more and more, and we don't have to remember much or many things anymore. It's not that we don't have to remember much, but many things we don't have to remember anymore. There is also this part where we have basically the states we are in. So basically, what if I could go back 2 years in time and be in a state after I read this particular book and actually access all of this information again? That's something that is not possible. But what if you actually took notes? But the thing is, of course, about taking notes, it does take a while, and you have to be like, yeah, you have to have a system in place. You have to be like, yeah, I read this book, and now let's put it into the list, and now let's make like 10, let's take like 20 minutes after every book you read and put down some information. I am really into this stuff, but I didn't even do this. But what you can do instead is just sit down, because I talked to probably a bunch of friends about the dozens of books I read. And if I just recorded this information after I read the book, and maybe just for myself, but maybe I just recorded it for myself, but also for others. So I basically had now two functions. I would store the information for myself, and I would also make it available for others, just providing the others with value. What if you documented your life like you already would do on your own, as much as it made sense, but just in a way that you don't say things that you wanna not have be publicly available, like your measurements, or I don't know, or your private address? What if you just left out these things and also just posted the content? Of course, that's okay with you, but what if you just left out all the parts? Then I think, to a huge extent, for example, when I read a book, and these are not things anybody else could also theoretically experience. Therefore, it's not that you read the book and then you think certain things. Of course, you connect things to different things. The thing I want to state is, it's not like this is private, top secret mission information you are accessing after you have read the book. It's not like you are now a special agent that has to go undercover because he has this special knowledge. And therefore, just sharing this information, just, of course, also being okay with you talking and actually being able to record yourself and having all this stuff connected to this is also a huge part. But what I realized for myself is that very often, if I, for example, just as an example, the H&M example wasn't totally made up. I actually was like, I want to go more minimalistic on the clothes I wear, maybe going black, or the theory was that what if I had like black things and just white shirts? Of course, this is not a very good example right now, but the thing is, what if I just, instead of, the thing is, what I realized over the years, that taking notes for myself, like many notes for myself, was very, very helpful, because whenever I found myself in the same situation, I could just go back. Basically, I now can go into OneNote and search for a particular word, and there are like 5 results, and then I can, so I did this thing, and this, of course. But if I didn't have this, I would have to think about it like for 20 minutes or 2 hours or 5 weeks, or I didn't ever remember it, because we just forget these things all the time. We forget so many important things that are important to us, but not to our brain, because our brain is like, what's important to you is the following function, what you experience times how important it actually is, like your arousal state. Like, for example, before an exam, you're like, this is so important, and then you are like 150 pulse beats per minute, and then of course everything seems more important and everything is stored. Or the events after you had an accident are of course stored much better, because the brain is like, this is probably important, because you are like sweating and you are like running. And now, what is the final conclusion? The final conclusion is this: what if you just document the things you already would document for yourself, but you just documented them publicly? This can be a blog. This can be, this can also be a short video, like 15 seconds, where you just say like, I had this jeans and it didn't fit because it essentially is completely wrong and it's made the wrong way, but this other jeans is better. It's not that everybody of your friends would be interested in this kind of information. It's not that your whole city or your family or your parents would be interested in this particular information, but everybody who is in the same situation as you would potentially be interested in this information. And even if they aren't, what can you lose? The only thing you can lose is that the other people are not interested, but then it's just like, okay. But at least you documented it for yourself, and that's also already a function of this documenting process. So for myself, it kind of works like this. I kind of thought about it like this. I basically take notes of my life, like, for example, this is something that went good this particular day, or this is something new that I didn't think about before and maybe changed things, or this is something I now tried for this amount of time and it finally worked, or things like these, or just things that are just it's basically taking your brain and just spitting it out onto paper or onto your notebook, and then you can go on, think about new things. But if you don't do this, then for years sometimes these things just circle in your head and they get bigger and bigger, or they don't, but they just stay in your head. And if you put them out, it's essentially like using Google then to search. It's the same, but as a private Google for yourself, basically. So now, instead of documenting things only for myself, I was like, because in the past I already was like, what if I documented myself with video? But of course this takes a ton of storage. But what if I just stored everything online? Then it wouldn't take tons of storage. But of course this would be very difficult. But the thing is, if you record something and then you upload it online and then you just delete it, then you can go at any point in time where you have internet, you can go actually online and search for the thing. Because at no point in time you will be like, and I have like 5 terabyte of video files on my phone just in case I need some information of the past. But if you actually take the time and make something that also others would watch, it's also for you, because it's then already formatted in a way you could watch it again. And if I now want to buy a jeans at H&M, and again, I can go on my TikTok and like, that's how it looked. And I don't have to be like, doing all of this again. Of course, the TikTok and the H&M example is like something that's very trivial, but it's also something that's very practical. And that's also something that probably will help people. And people actually watched it, even though I don't have a huge reach. Like I only have, as of right now, I have sometimes a few people watching it, and sometimes a few more people watching it. Now, the thing is, your brain essentially is just an information processing device, and everything you put down on paper is capturing these different states of this information processing device. So whenever you put something out, essentially what I'm doing when creating something in OneNote, I'm documenting. Basically, I'm writing a blog just for myself. And what if whenever there was something in there that was like also could be useful to others potentially. I just took it and I just copy pasted and made it publicly available. Of course, you have to have a style that's kind of the same with you and also the same with other people, because if you have to write things differently and if you go to the public or to the internet and you're like, yeah, but now everything has to be academically written in academic language and in another language entirely, then of course it doesn't really work so much. But for example, I just switched to English for some parts of my documentation, and whenever I'm like, yeah, that's an idea and I could actually turn this into something, and then you could just mark it, and these are ideas I could potentially turn into something. Or often it's just like you could copy paste this onto a blog, because I mean, if you blog, then essentially you could of course try to make another style, but the style that's probably the fastest is the style you already have or you already develop by writing your personal blog or creating something. Like I now for a few instances I just created I just recorded the setups, like how the cables are connected, and I was like, yeah, so this is how you connect a loop station to a microphone, and then I just showed it, and now I can just go back, and not only do you like document it for your future decision rational self, but it's also very nice just going back and yeah, and this was my old home, and now I can just see it because it's actually recorded on video, and you don't have to be like, yeah, I just record like gigabytes and gigabytes of video files just for myself, just for this one future moment where I'm like, yeah, and now I'm so melancholic and I want to watch all the old stuff. But what if instead you just could go on TikTok and you could just watch like this guy explaining, yeah, oh, and this is my loop station. So it's both. It's like so many functions in one. And there's another thing connected to this. Like, you have access to things other people don't. What if people in other countries, for example, could then make better purchasing decisions, or not only when it comes to purchasing, but also when it comes to basically all things. We all think about similar things all the time, and everything we think about could potentially be valuable to somebody else. Of course, it's not always like there's this big conclusion now, and you can also say this, of course. So you could say there is not this big conclusion now, just like in this video, and this is also something that you experienced, and this is also part of the process. It doesn't mean that every single meal you eat is something you could post on social media, but there is nobody attacking you when you do it, and there is nothing happening if you do it. I mean, it's not that you get fired the next day just because you post your meal on social media. Of course, there's also another part to the actual getting fired, because for many people, it's actually something they have to ask their employer to do if it's like something that potentially would make money in the future. I mean, that's another side. I talked about mostly the practical side, all the ideas behind all of this process. The idea that what if all people acted like this, we just would progress so much faster as a human society. Because, I mean, of course, purchasing decisions about H&M aren't the world, but it actually also forces these companies to then maybe get rid of the mistake or the bug that's in the notebook or the laptop, because somebody actually went out there and said like, yeah, and this notebook doesn't work anymore, and now I lost $2,000, and then somebody else can go and research this online and like, okay, then I just don't buy this notebook, but another one. And this is, I think, what's already happening, and this is how you could potentially contribute to this, but not only contribute to this bigger idea, but also just make your own life easier by relying on the information processing you already did in the past.